The marble floors of the courthouse gleamed under the afternoon sun, cold and indifferent beneath my worn sneakers. I pressed myself against the wall outside Courtroom 4B, trying to become invisible among the crowd of lawyers in expensive suits and families caught in their own legal nightmares. My fingers trembled as I clutched the envelope containing the divorce papers, the final severing of a marriage that had rotted from the inside out. 3 years. 3 years of Marcus's lies, his disappearances, his promises that dissolved like sugar in rain. The hallway smelled of floor polish and desperation, a scent I'd grown familiar with over the past 6 months of legal proceedings. My ex-husband's lawyer had assured me this would be quick, painless even, a formality. Marcus wouldn't contest anything because he had nothing left to contest. He'd already taken everything that mattered, my trust, my savings, my belief that love could be anything other than a carefully constructed illusion. I shifted my weight, feeling the ache in my lower back from my double shift at Constellation, the 5-star restaurant where I worked as a server. The uniform polo shirt beneath my cardigan still carried the faint smell of truffle oil and expensive wine. I'd barely had time to change before rushing here, my hair still pinned in the tight bun they required, a few dark strands escaping to frame my exhausted face. "Mrs. Chen?" A clerk appeared, clipboard in hand, her expression professionally neutral. "They're ready for you." My heart hammered against my ribs as I followed her through the heavy wooden doors. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, more intimate, which somehow made everything worse. Marcus sat at the defendant's table with his lawyer, Mr. Hutchinson, a man whose retainer probably cost more than I made in 6 months. My ex-husband didn't look at me. He never did anymore, not since I'd discovered the extent of his betrayal. Judge Morrison, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, sat elevated before us. I took my seat next to my court-appointed lawyer, a kind but overworked woman named Sarah Chen, no relation, who'd done her best with the scraps we had to work with. "We're here for the dissolution of marriage between Elena Rossi and Marcus Chen," Judge Morrison began, her voice carrying the weariness of someone who'd presided over too many broken promises. "I understand both parties have agreed to the terms." "Yes, Your Honor." Marcus's lawyer stood, smoothing his silk tie. "My client is prepared to sign today. The division of assets has been settled, child custody arrangements finalized." "Actually, Your Honor," a voice interrupted from the back of the courtroom, "there's been a development." Every head turned. A woman stepped forward from the shadows near the door. Teresa, Marcus's housekeeper. Or rather, his mother's housekeeper. I'd met her only twice during my marriage, both times at the Santos family estate where Marcus's parents lived. She was a small woman in her late 50s, with iron gray hair pulled back severely and hands that showed decades of hard work. But it wasn't Teresa who made my breath catch. Behind her stood a man who seemed to draw all the air from the room. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate and controlled. Tall, probably 6'3", with shoulders that filled out his charcoal suit in a way that suggested the expensive fabric had been tailored to perfection. His hair was dark, almost black, styled in that effortlessly elegant way that probably required more product and time than I spent on my entire appearance. But it was his face that arrested me. Sharp jawline shadowed with precisely groomed stubble, high cheekbones, and eyes the color of aged whiskey that seemed to assess and calculate everything in a single sweep. He couldn't have been more than 32, 33 at most. Young for the aura of absolute authority that surrounded him like a force field, 2 men flanked him, both built like brick walls stuffed into designer suits, their eyes constantly scanning the room with professional vigilance. One spoke quietly into his wrist, the kind of discreet communication that spoke of security details and protected assets. The man's gaze found me across the courtroom, and something shifted in his expression, a flicker of recognition that made no sense because I'd never seen him before. I would have remembered. The intensity of his attention made my skin prickle with awareness, and something else, something that felt dangerously close to fear, or fascination. His cologne reached me even from 15 feet away, sandalwood and something darker, expensive and intoxicating. He wore a watch that probably cost more than my annual salary, the kind of understated luxury that whispered, rather than shouted wealth. "Your Honor," Teresa's voice shook slightly as she addressed the judge, but her spine remained straight. I have evidence that's relevant to these proceedings. Evidence of fraud and theft that Mr. Chen committed against Mr. Dante Caruso's family. Dante Caruso. The name ricocheted through the courtroom like a gunshot. I didn't recognize it, but clearly others did. Marcus had gone pale, his lawyer's hand shooting out to grip his client's arm. Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose nearly to her hairline. "This is highly irregular," Mr. Hutchinson sputtered. "Your Honor, this hearing is about a divorce, not criminal allegations." "The allegations directly impact the division of assets," Teresa interrupted, her courage seeming to grow with each word. She held up a USB drive. "Everything Mr. Chen acquired during his marriage, the car, the condo, the restaurant investment he claims is marital property, was purchased with money he embezzled from the Caruso family businesses." My stomach dropped. Restaurant investment? Marcus had told me that money came from his promotion, from legitimate work. I'd been so exhausted, so focused on just surviving each day, that I hadn't questioned it deeply enough. "Your Honor, I object strenuously," Mr. Hutchinson began. "I'll allow it," Judge Morrison said, her interest clearly piqued. "This court needs to establish legitimate assets before division. Bailiff, please set up the display." The next few minutes moved in slow motion. A screen descended. The bailiff inserted the USB drive. And then Teresa pressed play. The video quality was grainy, clearly from a security camera, but the images were damning. "Marcus, in the Caruso family's private office, I recognized the distinctive wood paneling Teresa had once pointed out to me. Transferring files to an external drive. Date stamps showed he'd been doing it for months. The timestamps corresponded to late nights when he'd told me he was working overtime. But it was the second video that made my hands go numb. Marcus, meeting with a man I didn't recognize in what looked like a warehouse. Money changing hands, documents being signed, and then, most devastating, Marcus laughing, actually laughing, as he showed his companion photographs on his phone, photographs of me, at the restaurant where I worked, unaware I was being watched. Coming out of our apartment, exhaustion evident in every line of my body. Even one of me sleeping, taken from beside our bed, my face peaceful in unconsciousness. "Insurance." Marcus's voice came through the speaker, tinny but clear. "If the Carusos figure it out, I'll say she was in on it. She signed the restaurant papers, didn't she? Her name's on the partnership agreement. They'll believe she helped me steal from them." The courtroom spun. My vision tunneled. I was the fall guy, the scapegoat, my signature on those papers. Papers Marcus had brought home late one night. Papers he'd said were just formalities for his promotion. Would make me appear complicit in whatever he'd stolen. "Your Honor." Teresa's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Mrs. Rossi had no knowledge of the theft. But her husband has been setting her up to take the blame if he was discovered. Mr. Caruso has been investigating this matter for 3 months. We only discovered Mrs. Rossi's innocence yesterday, when I finally found the courage to come forward with what I'd witnessed." Judge Morrison's face had hardened into granite. "Mr. Chen, you will remain seated. Bailiff, please ensure Mr. Chen doesn't leave this courtroom. I'm issuing a temporary hold on all assets pending investigation." But I couldn't hear the rest. The room tilted dangerously. Black spots danced across my vision. I'd eaten nothing since yesterday's lunch shift, had survived on coffee and anxiety, and now my body decided it had endured enough. Strong hands caught me before I hit the floor. The sandalwood scent enveloped me, and I found myself looking up into those whiskey-colored eyes at close range. Dante Caruso had crossed the courtroom with remarkable speed for a man his size, his bodyguards moving to flank us protectively. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice low and accented. Italian, I realized distantly, not the thick accent of recent immigrants, but the subtle influence of someone who'd grown up bilingual. "Slowly, Elena. You're safe." He knew my name. He'd said it with a familiarity that should have alarmed me, but my oxygen-deprived brain could only focus on the fact that his hands on my arms were steady and warm, anchoring me to consciousness. "I didn't know," I whispered, hating how broken my voice sounded. I swear I didn't know what he was doing. Something flickered in his expression. Belief, perhaps, or satisfaction. "I know." Teresa made that very clear. His thumb brushed against my inner wrist. whether checking my pulse or offering comfort. I couldn't tell. But we need to talk, Elena, because whether you knew it or not, your name is now attached to a very serious crime against my family. The words should have terrified me. This man, with his bodyguards and his expensive suit, and the dangerous edge that hummed beneath his polished exterior, was clearly someone who wielded power in ways that had nothing to do with courtrooms and everything to do with the shadows that existed beyond legal boundaries. But instead of fear, I felt something else entirely. His hands hadn't moved from my arms. Judge Morrison was ordering a recess. Marcus was shouting something about his rights. Mr. Hutchinson was demanding explanations. And through it all, Dante Caruso kept his eyes locked on mine, holding me upright with a possessiveness that transcended simple assistance. "Can you stand?" he asked, and I nodded, not trusting my voice. He helped me to my feet with surprising gentleness for a man who radiated controlled violence. One of his bodyguards materialized with a bottle of water, where he'd procured it so quickly I couldn't fathom, and Dante opened it himself before handing it to me. "Small sips," he instructed, watching me with an intensity that made my skin heat despite the courtroom's aggressive air conditioning. I drank, my hand shaking slightly, aware of every eye in the room tracking our interaction. Marcus had stopped shouting and was now staring at us with an expression I'd never seen before, genuine fear mixed with dawning realization. "Mr. Caruso," Judge Morrison called out, her tone carefully neutral. "I'll need you to file formal charges if you wish to pursue this matter." "Already done, Your Honor," Dante replied, without looking away from me. "My lawyers will be in touch with the prosecutor's office within the hour, but right now I need to speak with Mrs. Rossi privately. It wasn't a request." "Your Honor," my lawyer began, protective instinct overriding her intimidation. "It's okay, Sarah," I heard myself say, though I wasn't sure it was okay at all. Nothing about this situation was okay. But something in Dante's expression told me that refusing him wasn't truly an option. Not because he'd force me, I sensed he wouldn't, but because the consequences of my husband's theft had already trapped me in a web I didn't yet understand. And Dante Caruso held all the threads. Judge Morrison studied us for a long moment before nodding. "Court is in recess for 30 minutes. Mr. Chen, you will remain here under bailiff supervision. Mrs. Rossi, you're free to go, but I strongly suggest you remain available for further questions." Dante's hand moved to the small of my back, a gesture that would have seemed courteous, if not for the way his fingers splayed possessively across my spine, guiding me toward the door. His bodyguards moved with us, creating a protective bubble that parted the crowd of gawkers and court personnel. I glanced back once. Marcus was watching us leave, and for the first time in 3 years, I saw him truly seeing me, recognizing, perhaps too late, that he'd sold me to the devil without realizing the devil would collect his due. The courthouse hallway felt different now, charged with danger and possibility. Dante led me away from the courtroom, away from the curious eyes, toward a quieter corridor, where afternoon light streamed through tall windows. "Before we talk," he said, stopping in a pool of sunlight that turned his dark hair almost bronze, "you should know one thing, Elena." His use of my first name again sent a shiver down my spine. We were strangers. We shouldn't feel like anything else. "What?" I managed. Those whiskey eyes held mine, and in their depths I saw something that made my breath catch. Not anger at my supposed involvement in the theft, but something far more complicated, more dangerous. "Your husband didn't just steal money from my family," Dante said softly, each word precisely enunciated. "He stole something far more valuable. And now..." His hand lifted, fingers brushing a loose strand of hair from my face with shocking intimacy. "Now you're going to help me get it back." The coffee shop Dante chose was nothing like the chain establishments I frequented between shifts. Tucked into a corner building 3 blocks from the courthouse, it had the kind of understated elegance that screamed exclusivity. Exposed brick walls, leather booths worn soft with age, and a barista who greeted Dante with a subtle nod that suggested he was a regular, despite the place being empty at 3 in the afternoon. One of his bodyguards remained outside, a silent sentinel beside the black SUV with tinted windows that had been waiting at the courthouse's side entrance. The other, introduced only as Marco, positioned himself near the door, his eyes constantly tracking the street beyond the windows. Dante guided me to a booth in the back corner, the leather cool against my legs as I slid in. He sat across from me, close enough that his cologne wrapped around me like a phantom touch, and gestured to the barista without speaking. Within minutes, an espresso appeared before him, and a cappuccino materialized in front of me. The foam formed into a perfect rosette. "I didn't order," I started. "You look like you haven't eaten since yesterday," he interrupted, those perceptive eyes cataloging details I wished I could hide. "The cappuccino has more substance than black coffee, and Maria is bringing food." Sure enough, the barista, Maria apparently, returned with a plate of pastries and what looked like a panini, still warm and fragrant with melted cheese and herbs. My stomach betrayed me with an audible growl. "Eat," Dante commanded, his tone brooking no argument. "We'll talk after you have something in your system. You nearly fainted in court. I won't have you collapsing during this conversation." The possessive note in his voice, "I won't have you," should have raised my hackles. Instead, I found myself reaching for the panini, my hunger overriding my confusion about why this dangerous stranger seemed so invested in my well-being. The first bite was heaven. Fresh mozzarella, tomato, basil, and some kind of cured meat I couldn't identify but tasted expensive. I hadn't realized how empty I was until food hit my stomach. Dante watched me eat with an expression I couldn't decipher. Not quite satisfaction, but something warmer, more personal. His fingers drummed once against the table, a brief break in his otherwise perfect control, before he reached for his espresso and downed it in one practiced motion. "Better?" he asked after I'd consumed half the sandwich. I nodded, wiping my mouth with the cloth napkin. Real cloth, not paper. Even the coffee shop operated on a different level than anything in my world. "Good." He leaned back, the leather creaking softly. "Now we talk. And Elena, I need complete honesty from you. Can you give me that?" "I've never lied about what Marcus did," I said, defensive despite his reasonable tone. "I didn't know about the theft. I didn't know he was using me as insurance. I worked double shifts while he told me he was building our future. I believe you." The simple statement cut through my building panic. "Teresa verified your work schedule. You were at Constellation during every theft. The restaurant owners confirmed you've been pulling 60-hour weeks for the past 8 months, trying to pay down debts your husband accumulated." The casual revelation that he'd investigated me so thoroughly should have felt invasive. It did feel invasive, but beneath the violation was something else. A strange relief that someone finally saw how hard I'd been struggling, how much I'd been drowning while Marcus played criminal mastermind. "Then what do you want from me?" I asked, my fingers twisting the napkin. "If you know I'm innocent of theft, yes." Dante's expression hardened, and I glimpsed the man beneath the polished exterior. Dangerous, unforgiving. "But your signature is on documents that transferred stolen assets. Your name is attached to a restaurant partnership funded with money embezzled from my family's operations. Legally, you're complicit whether you knew it or not." The panini turned to lead in my stomach. "But I didn't." "I know." His hand moved across the table, covering mine before I could pull away. His palm was warm, his grip firm, but not painful. "Which is why I'm offering you a way out." I stared at our joined hands. His fingers were long, elegant despite their obvious strength, and I noticed a thin scar across his knuckles, the kind that came from violence, not accidents. Everything about Dante Caruso whispered of danger wrapped in expensive suits, yet his touch remained gentle. "What kind of way out?" I forced myself to ask, though part of me already knew the answer wouldn't be simple or free. "Your husband stole $3 million from my family over the course of 18 months, Dante said, his thumb brushing across my knuckles in a gesture that felt far too intimate for a business discussion. "But the money is secondary. What matters is what he stole with it. Proprietary information about our import business, client lists, trade routes, information he sold to our competitors." My mouth went dry. Import business could mean anything, but the way Marco shifted position near the door, the careful neutrality in Dante's tone, suggested the Caruso family dealt in goods that existed in legal gray areas at best. "I don't know anything about that," I whispered. "I know," he repeated, patient in a way that felt more dangerous than anger. "But Marcus does. And he kept records, Elena. Insurance of his own, I suspect. We've recovered some of his files, but not all. The complete picture is still missing, so arrest him. Make him tell you. The legal system moves slowly, Dante interrupted, his eyes never leaving mine, and there are aspects of my family's business that can't withstand that kind of scrutiny. We handle our own justice. The words hung between us, heavy with implication. I should have stood up, should have walked away from this man who spoke so casually about operating outside the law, but his hand still held mine, and I was trapped. Not by force, but by the terrible understanding that I had nowhere else to go. What do you want me to do? The question emerged smaller than I intended. Dante's expression shifted, something almost like approval flickering across his features. Marcus kept a safe in your apartment. Teresa saw him accessing it multiple times but never discovered the combination. I need what's inside it. We're separated, I said, confused. He moved out 4 months ago. The apartment is mine now, but I've never seen a safe. It's hidden behind a false panel in the bedroom closet. Dante's knowledge of my living space sent chills down my spine. How thoroughly had he investigated me? The building has security cameras, and Marcus still visits occasionally when you're at work. He doesn't know we've been watching. The violation of privacy should have outraged me. Instead, I felt only exhaustion and a growing sense of inevitability. Marcus had turned my life into a crime scene, and now I was evidence to be collected and analyzed. If you've been watching, why haven't you just broken in and taken whatever you need? I asked, and Dante's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile, because the safe requires a code and possibly a fingerprint scanner. Forcing it open would destroy anything inside. And because... He paused, his grip on my hand tightening fractionally. Because I wanted to meet you first, to understand what kind of woman could survive 3 years married to a snake like Marcus Chen without becoming poisonous herself. The compliment, if it was a compliment, landed strangely. You don't know anything about me. I know you work yourself to exhaustion trying to pay debts you didn't create, Dante countered, his voice dropping lower, more intimate. I know you didn't run when you discovered Marcus's betrayal. You fought for a legal divorce, tried to do things the right way, even though it cost you everything. I know you're stronger than you believe. Heat crept up my neck. No one had spoken to me like this in years. Like I was something valuable, worth protecting. Marcus had ground down my self-worth so gradually I hadn't noticed its erosion until I was standing in quicksand. Here's what I'm offering, Dante continued, finally releasing my hand, though I could still feel the ghost of his warmth. You help me access that safe. Give me everything inside. In return, I'll ensure the legal charges against you disappear. I'll provide you with enough money to start over. New apartment, paid off debts, 6 months living expenses minimum. It was too generous, too easy. What's the catch? I asked. The catch, Dante said, his eyes glittering with something I couldn't name, is that until this situation is resolved, you stay under my protection. Marcus knows you can access that safe. Once he realizes we've made contact, he'll come for you, either to use you as leverage against me or to eliminate the evidence of his involvement. I won't let either happen. Protection, I repeated slowly. Meaning what? Exactly. Meaning you move into one of my properties. Meaning Marco or someone from my security team accompanies you everywhere. Meaning you don't make a move without my knowledge. He leaned forward, eliminating the space between us until I could count the gold flecks in his irises. Meaning you become mine to protect, Elena. Completely. The possessiveness in his tone should have sent me running. This man was a stranger, a criminal probably. Someone who lived in a world of violence and shadows I'd only glimpsed in movies. But I had no money. No home I could afford without the settlement I'd been counting on, a settlement that had just evaporated in the wake of Marcus's theft. No family to turn to. My parents had died in a car accident 6 years ago, and I'd been so isolated during my marriage that friendships had withered to nothing. I had nothing except the clothes on my back and the terrible knowledge that Marcus had turned me into a target. How long? I asked, my voice barely audible. However long it takes to retrieve what Marcus stole and neutralize the threat he poses. Dante's hand moved to my face, cupping my jaw with shocking tenderness. Days. Weeks. I'll move as quickly as possible. But Elena, I need you to understand. Once you agree to this, you're under my protection. That means following my rules, trusting my judgment, accepting that I will keep you safe by any means necessary. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I shivered despite the warmth of the coffee shop. This was insane. Everything about this situation violated every instinct for self-preservation I possessed. But what choice did I have? Okay, I whispered. Dante's eyes flared with satisfaction and something darker. Say it properly. I need to hear you agree. I agree to your protection, I said, stronger this time. I'll help you get what's in the safe. I'll follow your rules. Good girl. The praise sent an unwelcome flush through my body. Dante stood, pulling me up with him, his hands on my waist, steadying me. Marco will take you to your apartment to collect what you need. Pack light. You won't be returning there. I'll meet you at the residence in 2 hours. Wait! Panic fluttered in my chest. This is happening now? Today? Marcus will be released from courthouse custody within hours, Dante said, his voice hardening. The moment he's free, he'll either run or come after you. I won't risk the latter. You're mine to protect now, Elena. And I protect what's mine. There was that word again. Mine. Spoken with such absolute certainty that it bypassed argument and landed directly in the realm of fact. Marco appeared at Dante's subtle gesture, and I found myself being guided toward the door before I could process everything that had just happened. The afternoon sunlight felt too bright, too normal for a day that had upended my entire existence. The SUV's interior was all black leather and tinted windows. Marco held the door open, professional and silent, while Dante remained standing on the sidewalk, his phone already to his ear, speaking rapid Italian to whoever was on the other end. I climbed in, the door shutting with an expensive, solid thunk that sounded like finality. Through the tinted window, I watched Dante finish his call. He looked at the SUV, at me, though I knew he couldn't see through the darkened glass, and his expression shifted into something that made my breath catch. Hunger, possession, the look of a predator who'd just claimed his territory. Then Marco was in the driver's seat, the engine purred to life, and we pulled away from the curb. I twisted in my seat, watching Dante recede into the distance, and realized with absolute certainty that I'd just made a deal with someone far more dangerous than my ex-husband could ever hope to be. The question wasn't whether I'd regret it. The question was how completely Dante Caruso intended to own me before this was over. My apartment looked smaller through Marco's eyes. He stood in the doorway of my studio, his bulk making the space feel even more cramped, and I saw what he must see. The secondhand furniture, the kitchenette with its chipped countertop, the bathroom door that didn't close all the way. The window overlooked a brick wall. The carpet was stained in places I'd tried and failed to clean. This was what 3 years of marriage to Marcus had left me, a shoebox with a hot plate, and dreams I'd packed away in boxes I couldn't afford to store. The closet? Marco asked, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man who looked like he broke bones professionally. I nodded, moving past him into the narrow space that served as my bedroom, really just a corner with a futon and a standing wardrobe I'd found on the street. My hands shook as I opened the closet door, pushing aside the handful of clothes I owned. Back panel, Marco said, already moving forward. His fingers found the seam I'd never noticed, and with a practiced motion, he pressed something that made a section of the wall swing inward. The safe was small, matte black, with a digital keypad, and what looked like a biometric scanner beside it. I'd lived here for 4 months since Marcus moved out, had reorganized this closet a dozen times, and never suspected its existence. You never saw this before? Marco asked, watching my face. Never. The word came out bitter. How many other secrets had Marcus hidden in plain sight, while I'd worked myself to exhaustion, trying to save our sinking marriage? Marco pulled out his phone, snapping photos of the safe from multiple angles. Boss will want to see this. Do you know any codes Marcus used regularly? Birthday combinations? Anniversary dates? I rattled off the numbers I knew. His birthday, his mother's birthday, the date we'd married. Each one Marco tried resulted in a hostile beep and a red light. After the third attempt, the safe emitted a longer tone and the screen flashed a warning. 2 attempts remaining before lockout. Stop, I said, panic rising. If it locks, we'll never get it open. Marco stepped back, his phone already at his ear. Boss, we found it. Digital lock, biometric scanner, and we've got 2 attempts left before lockout. A pause. Yes, sir. 20 minutes. He ended the call and looked at me with something approaching sympathy. Mr. Caruso is on his way. Pack what you need. 1 bag. 1 bag to contain an entire life. I pulled my battered duffel from under the futon and began the humiliating process of packing while Marco politely turned his attention to the window, giving me the illusion of privacy. Clothes. I didn't have many that weren't work uniforms. Toiletries from the bathroom. The framed photo of my parents that sat on the windowsill, their faces forever frozen in happiness at my college graduation. A few books. The necklace my mother had given me, the only jewelry I owned that held any value beyond sentiment. It took less than 15 minutes to pack everything that mattered. I was zipping the bag when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Measured, confident, followed by the distinctive cadence of multiple people moving in formation. Marco straightened, his hand moving subtly to his jacket where I suspected a weapon rested, then relaxed as Dante appeared in the doorway. He'd removed his suit jacket, his white shirt was rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with more of those thin scars I'd noticed earlier. He carried a leather briefcase that looked old and expensive, and his eyes found me immediately, cataloging my packed bag and probably reading more in my expression than I wanted to reveal. Good, he said, his gaze lingering on my face before moving to the open closet. You found it quickly. 2 more men entered behind him. Not the bodyguard from the coffee shop, but others cut from the same cloth. One carried what looked like specialized equipment in a metal case. The other positioned himself in the hallway, standing guard. My tiny apartment was suddenly full of dangerous men in expensive clothes, and I felt more vulnerable than I had sitting across from Dante in the courthouse. Elena. Dante's voice pulled my attention back to him. He'd moved closer without me noticing, his presence overwhelming in the confined space. Did you try any codes? 3. Marco answered for me. Standard dates. Nothing worked. Dante nodded, setting his briefcase on my futon and opening it to reveal a laptop and several devices I didn't recognize. Marcus isn't creative enough for random numbers. It'll be something personal, something he could remember under pressure. Those whiskey eyes fixed on me again. Tell me about his family. His mother, Patricia, I said, trying to focus past the awareness of how close Dante stood. Birthday is March 15th. His father died when Marcus was young. I never knew the exact date. He has a sister, Michelle, but they haven't spoken in years. Why not? Dante asked, his fingers moving across the laptop keyboard. I don't know. He refused to talk about her. I got the impression there was bad blood. Maybe over their father's estate. I wrinkled my forehead, trying to remember details Marcus had always deflected. She moved to Seattle, I think, or maybe Portland. He deleted all photos of her from his phone. Dante's expression sharpened. Deleted photos. When? About a year into our marriage. I asked about it once and he got angry. Said she'd betrayed the family and he wanted nothing to do with her. The memory surfaced reluctantly. He said she'd stolen something that belonged to him. Stolen something, Dante repeated, his voice dropping into a register that made my skin prickle. He typed something into the laptop, waited, then smiled, a predatory expression that had nothing to do with humor. Michelle Chen, born December 8, 1992. Married Antonio Ricci in a private ceremony in Portland 3 years ago. The name Ricci clearly meant something to the other men in the room. Marco swore softly in Italian. Who's Antonio Ricci? I asked. Someone Marcus shouldn't have crossed. Dante closed the laptop and moved to the safe, studying it with the intensity of a jeweler examining a diamond. Michelle was promised to the son of one of my father's associates. The marriage would have solidified a business relationship, but she fell in love with Antonio instead, a man from a rival family. When she ran off with him, it created problems, complications. He didn't elaborate on what those complications entailed, but the weight of his words suggested violence had been involved. Marcus blamed Michelle for the fallout, Dante continued, his fingers hovering over the keypad. I'm willing to bet he used her birthday as his code. The ultimate insult, locking away stolen goods with the numbers belonging to the sister he believes ruined his life. That's a lot of psychological projection for a safe code, I said before I could stop myself. Dante's laugh was unexpected. genuine, rich, transforming his face into something almost boyish. "You're not wrong, but men like Marcus think they're cleverer than they are. They create elaborate symbolism where simple paranoia would serve better." He entered the numbers, 120892, and I held my breath. The safe beeped. The light flashed red. One attempt remaining before lockout. "Damn," Marco muttered. But Dante didn't look concerned. If anything, he looked more focused. He'd reverse it. Make it harder to guess for anyone who knew Michelle's actual birthday. His fingers moved again. 920812. Another beep. This time, the light flashed green. The safe door released with a soft click that sounded deafening in the silent apartment. Dante pulled it open, revealing stacks of documents, several USB drives, and a handgun I recognized as Marcus's, the one he'd bought illegally 2 years ago and I'd begged him to get rid of. Dante pulled out his phone, photographing everything before touching it, then began carefully removing items. The man with the equipment case came forward, pulling on latex gloves and placing each item into labeled evidence bags with professional efficiency. "What is all this?" I asked, moving closer despite my better judgment. Dante held up one of the documents, a ledger filled with numbers and codes I didn't understand. Proof of every transaction Marcus made with stolen funds, client lists he sold to competitors, communications that implicate him and several others in a conspiracy to undermine my family's business operations. He set it aside and reached for a USB drive. "And if I'm right, these contain the digital files we've been searching for. That's good, right?" I said. "You have what you need. You can let the police handle Marcus." "No police." Dante's voice was flat, absolute. "This information goes nowhere near law enforcement. Too many of these documents implicate people who can't afford that kind of scrutiny, including members of my own organization." The casual admission that his organization operated outside legal bounds shouldn't have surprised me, but hearing it stated so plainly made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. I was standing in my apartment watching a crime boss collect evidence of crimes, protected by armed men who answered to him rather than any badge or authority I recognized. "What happens to Marcus?" The question emerged shakier than I intended. Dante finished photographing the safe's contents and straightened, his full attention returning to me. The intensity of his focus made me want to step back, but there was nowhere to go in the cramped space. "Marcus will answer for what he's stolen," Dante said, moving closer until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "But that's not your concern anymore. Your concern is staying safe while I clean up the mess he created." "I didn't ask to be protected," I said, defiance sparking despite my fear. "I didn't ask for any of this, no." His hand came up, fingers curling under my chin and tilting my face up to meet his eyes. "You didn't. You asked for a simple divorce from a mediocre man who wasn't worth 5 minutes of your time. Instead, you got dragged into my world. And Elena, I'm sorry for that. Truly." The apology sounded genuine, which somehow made everything worse. This would be easier if he were simply a monster, a villain from a movie. But Dante Caruso held my face with surprising gentleness while his men cataloged evidence of serious crimes, and his eyes reflected something that looked unsettlingly like regret, mixed with hunger. "But you're in my world now," he continued, his thumb brushing my lower lip in a gesture that sent electricity down my spine. "And in my world, I protect what's mine, whether you asked for it or not." A phone rang, shattering the moment. Marco answered, listened, then his expression hardened. "Boss, Marcus made bail 10 minutes ago. He had a car waiting. We lost him in traffic near the courthouse." The change in Dante was instantaneous. His hand dropped from my face as he spun toward Marco, his entire body coiling with controlled violence. "How did you lose him?" "Professional driver, knew the escape routes." "We think someone tipped him off," Marco began, but Dante was already moving, pulling his phone out and barking orders in rapid Italian. Within seconds, the apartment transformed into organized chaos. The man bagging evidence worked faster. Another bodyguard appeared in the doorway, reporting something about units converging and setting up perimeter. Dante returned his attention to me, and the man who touched my face with tenderness was gone. In his place was someone colder, more calculating. We're leaving. Now. But Marcus knows we've found the safe by now. He'll assume we've already opened it, which means you're no longer useful to him as leverage. Dante grabbed my packed duffel with one hand and my arm with the other, his grip firm but not painful. You're a liability, a witness who can testify to his habits, his patterns. He'll come for you, Elena, and he won't come to talk. The words should have sounded melodramatic. Instead, they landed with the weight of truth. I'd seen the video footage of Marcus laughing as he planned to frame me. I knew exactly how expendable he considered me. Marco led the way out, one hand inside his jacket where his weapon must be. Another bodyguard flanked us from behind. Dante kept me close, so close I could feel the tension in his body, the coiled readiness for violence. The hallway felt longer than usual, shadows deeper. Every sound made me flinch, the elevator ding, a neighbor's door opening, footsteps on the stairs. We made it to the parking garage without incident. The black SUV waited near the entrance, engine already running, another vehicle, this one a sedan with tinted windows, idling behind it. Dante guided me into the back seat of the SUV, sliding in beside me. Marco took the driver's seat. The door locks engaged with a solid thunk that felt like a jail cell closing. "Where are we going?" I asked as Marco pulled out into traffic, the sedan following close behind. "Somewhere Marcus can't reach you." Dante's hand found mine in the darkness of the vehicle, his fingers lacing through mine with surprising intimacy. "Somewhere I can keep you safe." The city slid past the tinted windows. Familiar streets suddenly alien, dangerous. I recognized the route toward the waterfront, expensive neighborhoods I'd only ever glimpsed while serving champagne to people who considered my annual salary pocket change. "Dante?" I said, his name strange on my tongue. "What if Marcus doesn't come after me? What if he just runs?" "He won't run." The certainty in Dante's voice was absolute. "He's arrogant enough to think he can still fix this, and he knows you're the key, either as a hostage to negotiate his escape or as someone who needs to be silenced. Either way, he'll come." His thumb traced circles on the back of my hand, the gesture oddly soothing despite his grim words. "And when he does," I whispered. Dante turned to look at me, and in the dim light of passing street lamps, his eyes gleamed with cold promise. "When he does, I'll be waiting. And he'll learn exactly what happens to men who threaten what belongs to me." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened me. Should have made me demand he let me out at the next light. Consequences be damned. Instead, I tightened my grip on his hand and watched the city disappear behind us, knowing with absolute certainty that my life had just divided into before and after. Before Dante Caruso. And everything that would come after. The house wasn't a house. It was a fortress disguised as luxury. We'd driven for 40 minutes, leaving the city proper, and winding through hills where estates sat behind gates and hedges, each property more ostentatious than the last. But Dante's residence made the others look modest by comparison. The gate was wrought iron, 10 feet tall, with security cameras visible at multiple angles. The driveway curved through manicured grounds lit by discreet landscape lighting, and the house itself sprawled across the hilltop, 3 stories of stone and glass that probably housed more square footage than my entire apartment building. Marco pulled up to the front entrance where 2 more men in suits waited. Dante was out before the vehicle stopped fully, moving around to my door and opening it himself. "Welcome home," he said, and the phrase landed strangely. Not my home. Not the home. Just home, as if my belonging here was already decided. The interior was elegant without being cold. Hardwood floors warmed by expensive rugs, cream walls decorated with art that looked original and probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. A curved staircase dominated the foyer, and through an archway, I glimpsed a living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights below. A woman appeared from a side hallway, older, perhaps 60, with silver hair in a neat bun and kind eyes that assessed me quickly. "Mr. Caruso, your guest?" "Elena, this is Rosa. She manages the household." Dante's hand remained on the small of my back. "Rosa, Elena will be staying in the East Wing. Make sure she has everything she needs." "Of course." Rosa's smile was genuine, which somehow made me want to cry. Kindness felt dangerous right now, like it might crack whatever shell I'd built to get through this surreal day. Miss Elena, if you'll follow me, I'll show you to your room. I'll take her. Dante's interruption was gentle but firm. Thank you, Rosa. Perhaps some dinner in 30 minutes? Elena hasn't eaten properly today. Rosa nodded and disappeared, leaving me alone with Dante in the cavernous foyer. His hand urged me forward, up the staircase where our footsteps were muffled by a runner that probably cost more than my car, before Marcus had totaled it in one of his accidents that I now suspected had been intentional sabotage. The east wing was accessed through a hallway lined with more art. Dante stopped at a door, opening it to reveal a bedroom suite that made my breath catch. The room was massive, decorated in soft grays and whites with touches of deep blue. A king-sized bed dominated one wall, covered in linens that looked like they'd feel like clouds. French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking the grounds. There was a sitting area with a couch and armchair, a desk by the window, and 2 other doors that I assumed led to a closet and bathroom. The bathroom is through there, Dante confirmed, reading my gaze. Rosa stocked it this afternoon with essentials, but if you need anything specific, just ask. The closet has some clothes. I had my assistant purchase a selection based on your size from your work records. If they don't fit or aren't to your taste, we'll get others. I turned to stare at him. You bought me clothes? This afternoon? I make decisions quickly once I commit to a course of action. He set my duffel on the bench at the foot of the bed, then moved to the French doors, checking the lock with practiced efficiency before pulling the curtains closed. The room is secure. Windows are bulletproof glass. There are panic buttons, one by the bed, one in the bathroom, one by the door. Press any of them and my security team will be here in under 30 seconds. Bulletproof glass, I repeated faintly. Dante turned back to me, and something in my expression must have concerned him, because he closed the distance between us quickly. Elena, look at me. I did, though it took effort. Those whiskey eyes studied me with unsettling intensity. I know this is overwhelming, he said, his voice dropping to that low register that seemed to bypass my brain and speak directly to something more primitive. You went from a divorce hearing to discovering your ex-husband's crimes to being under my protection, all in a matter of hours. Anyone would be in shock. I'm not in shock, I said, though the words sounded unconvincing even to my own ears. I'm just processing, then process. His hands came up to frame my face, thumbs brushing my cheekbones. Take a long bath. Eat dinner. Rest. Tomorrow we'll develop a plan for dealing with Marcus and getting you untangled from his mess. But tonight, you're safe. That's all you need to focus on. The tenderness in his touch contradicted everything I knew about dangerous men. Dante Caruso should be cold, calculating, treating me like a useful asset and nothing more. Instead, he held my face like I was something precious, breakable, worth protecting beyond the simple equation of what I could provide him. Why are you being so kind to me? The question escaped before I could stop it. You don't know me. I'm just a complication in your investigation. You're not just anything. The interruption was fierce, his grip tightening fractionally. Marcus made you a victim. He used you, set you up, stole your future while you worked yourself to exhaustion trying to build something real. That's not a complication, Elena. That's an injustice. And I don't tolerate injustice. But you're a criminal, I said, the words emerging softer than I intended. You just admitted you operate outside the law. How can you talk about justice? His smile was sharp, edged with something dark. The law and justice aren't the same thing. You should know that better than anyone after sitting in that courtroom today, watching your ex-husband try to hide behind legal technicalities while planning to destroy you. He wasn't wrong. The legal system had offered me nothing except the revelation that Marcus had turned my signature into a weapon against me. Come, Dante said, releasing my face and taking my hand instead. Let me show you something. He led me to the balcony doors, pulling the curtains back open and unlocking the French doors. Cool evening air rushed in as we stepped outside. The balcony was generous, furnished with comfortable chairs and a small table, but it was the view that stole my breath. The city sprawled below us, a carpet of light stretching to the dark line of the ocean in the distance. From this height, Everything looked clean, orderly, beautiful. The violence and desperation and grinding poverty that I knew existed down there was invisible, transformed into something almost magical by distance and darkness. Beautiful, isn't it? Dante stood behind me, close enough that I could feel his presence like heat against my back. From up here, you can't see the corruption, can't see the people suffering while others profit from their misery. It all looks peaceful. But it's an illusion, I said. Yes. His breath stirred my hair. The world is built on illusions, the illusion that laws protect the innocent, that hard work guarantees success, that love means loyalty. His hand settled on my shoulders, steady and warm. You believed those illusions once? Marcus taught you differently. I had believed. Had worked myself bloody trying to save a marriage that was already corpse-rotten. Had trusted that my dedication would matter, that my love would be enough. I don't believe in much anymore, I admitted. Good. Dante's hands slid down my arms, his touch raising goosebumps despite the layers between us. Believing in nothing is safer than believing in lies. But Elena, I'm going to offer you something true, something you can rely on. I turned in his loose grip to face him. What? My protection isn't conditional, he said, his eyes holding mine with hypnotic intensity. I don't need you to be useful or compliant or grateful. You're under my care now, and that means something in my world. It means no one touches you without going through me first. It means you eat, you rest, you stop grinding yourself down to nothing trying to survive. It means you're safe. Until this is over, I said. Until Marcus is dealt with and I'm no longer needed. No. The word was absolute. I don't operate on timers, Elena. Once someone is mine to protect, they stay protected. Even after Marcus is handled, even after the legal complications are resolved, you'll have my backing. A new apartment in a good neighborhood. A job that doesn't destroy you. Whatever you need to build a real life. It was too much, too generous. Why? What do you get out of it? Dante's expression shifted into something I couldn't read. Hunger mixed with something that looked almost like pain. Maybe I'm tired of watching innocent people get crushed by those with power. Maybe I see something in you that reminds me there's more to life than business and violence and endless maneuvering for position. His hand came up, fingers threading through my hair. Or maybe I'm just selfish enough to want to keep you close because you make me feel human instead of like the monster everyone believes I am. The confession hung between us, raw and honest in a way that made my chest ache. This close, I could see the fine lines around his eyes, the shadow of exhaustion beneath his perfect control. Dante Caruso might live in a fortress and command dangerous men, but he was still human, still capable of loneliness. I don't think you're a monster, I whispered. You should. But his thumb traced my lower lip with heartbreaking gentleness. I've done things that would horrify you. Ordered actions that ended lives. Made decisions that destroyed families. To protect your own family, I said, understanding clicking into place. Everything you do is for them. Family is everything in my world. His forehead came to rest against mine, his breath mingling with mine in the narrow space between us. Loyalty. Protection. Those are the only currencies that matter. Marcus betrayed that when he stole from us. He deserves what's coming. I should have been afraid of the cold promise in his voice. Instead, I felt something close to vindication. Marcus had betrayed me too, had used me, framed me, planned to destroy me without hesitation. What will you do to him? I asked. Do you really want to know? Dante's question was serious, giving me a chance to step back from knowledge that couldn't be unknown. I thought about it. About Marcus laughing in that video. About the divorce papers that would never be finalized because his crimes had invalidated everything. About 3 years of my life spent loving someone who'd seen me only as a useful tool. Yes, I said. Dante pulled back slightly, studying my face. Whatever he saw there satisfied him. He'll disappear. Quietly. His assets will be seized to repay what he stole, with the remainder going to his mother. She's innocent in this. His business partners will receive a message about the consequences of betraying my family, and you'll receive the divorce you wanted, filed through channels that ensure no legal blowback touches you. You'll kill him. I said it flatly, testing how the words felt. I'll ensure he can never hurt you or anyone else again. Dante didn't flinch from the implication. Does that bother you? It should have. I should have been horrified, should have demanded he find another way, should have clung to some moral high ground that proved I was better than the violence he offered. But all I felt was tired and relieved. No, I said honestly. It doesn't bother me. Dante's smile was slow, satisfied, tinged with admiration. You're stronger than you know, Elena Rossi. A knock at the door interrupted whatever might have happened next. Rosa's voice called through the wood. Mr. Caruso, dinner is ready. We'll be right there, Dante called back, though his eyes never left mine. Are you hungry? I nodded, realizing I was. The panini from the coffee shop felt like days ago instead of hours. Then let's eat. He took my hand again, that gesture that was becoming familiar, and led me back inside. Tomorrow we'll deal with Marcus. Tonight you rest and regain your strength. You're going to need it. The dining room was elegant, but surprisingly intimate. A table that could seat 12 set for 2 at one end, candles providing soft light that competed with the chandelier overhead. Rosa had outdone herself. Pasta with seafood, fresh bread, salad with vegetables that looked like they'd been harvested that day, and wine that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Dante held out a chair for me before taking the seat adjacent, rather than across, close enough to talk without shouting, close enough that I remained hyper-aware of his presence. Tell me about yourself, he said, after Rosa had served and disappeared. Not about Marcus, about you. Who were you before he took up all the space in your life? The question caught me off guard. No one had asked about me, just me, separate from my failed marriage. In so long I'd almost forgotten there was a me to discuss. I wanted to be a writer, I said slowly, the admission feeling like excavating buried treasure. In college I studied literature, had dreams of publishing novels, telling stories that mattered. What changed? Dante's attention was complete, focused in a way that made me feel like the only person in the world. Life changed. My parents died right after graduation. Medical bills, funeral costs, suddenly being alone in the world. I took the job at Constellation to pay bills, telling myself it was temporary. Then I met Marcus at a work event. He seemed stable, successful, like someone who had life figured out. I thought. I trailed off, embarrassed by my own naivety. You thought he'd be a partner, Dante finished. Someone to build a life with while you pursued your dreams. Instead, he became another weight to carry. I took a sip of wine, letting the complex flavors ground me. I stopped writing, stopped reading for pleasure, just worked and tried to keep us afloat while he spent money we didn't have on schemes that never worked. Until apparently they did work, just criminally. Dante's hand found mine on the table. After this is resolved, you'll write again. I'll make sure you have the time and space for it. You can't just wave a wand and fix my life, I protested, though the offer made something in my chest warm dangerously. Watch me. His smile was confident, tinged with arrogance that should have annoyed me, but somehow didn't. I'm very good at getting what I want, Elena. And what I want is to see you become who you were meant to be, not Marcus's victim, not a woman ground down by circumstance. But Elena Rossi, writer, survivor, someone strong enough to sit in my dining room and admit she doesn't mourn the man who tried to destroy her. The accuracy of his observation stole my breath. He saw me, really saw me, in a way Marcus never had despite 3 years of marriage. Why do you care? I asked again, needing to understand. Dante was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on my hand. My mother died when I was 16, he finally said. Cancer. It was brutal, watching her fade while my father threw money at treatments that did nothing except prolong her suffering. In the end, she made me promise something. He paused, and I waited, sensing this story mattered. She made me promise that if I ever had the power to protect innocent people from suffering they didn't deserve, I would. That I wouldn't become so consumed by the family business that I forgot what it meant to be human. His eyes met mine, vulnerable in a way I suspected few people ever saw. You remind me of that promise, Elena. You're suffering you didn't earn, caught in violence you didn't create. And I have the power to change that. So I will. The confession settled over us like silk, intimate and binding. This wasn't just about Marcus's theft or protecting a witness. This was personal for Dante in ways that had nothing to do with business. Your mother would be proud, I said softly. His smile was tinged with sadness. I hope so. Most days I'm not sure I've kept that promise very well. The things I've done. He shook his head. But maybe protecting you is a start toward balancing the scales. We finished dinner in companionable silence, the weight of the day finally settling over me like a heavy blanket. By the time Rosa cleared the plates, I could barely keep my eyes open. Dante walked me back to the east wing, his presence a solid comfort in the vast house. At my door, he paused, his hand coming up to cup my face one more time. Sleep, he commanded gently. Tomorrow we'll face whatever comes, but tonight you're safe. I promise you that, Elena. On my mother's memory, you're safe. The vow was sacred to him. I could hear it in his voice, see it in his eyes, and despite everything, I believed him. I entered my room, closed the door, and leaned against it, my heart pounding. Through the wood, I heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway, steady and sure. I was in a crime boss's fortress, protected by dangerous men, tangled in a web of theft and violence that could destroy what was left of my life. But for the first time in years, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Morning came too quickly, sunlight streaming through gaps in the curtains I'd forgotten to close completely. For a moment, I didn't remember where I was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the air smelling of lavender instead of the mildew that plagued my old apartment. Then reality crashed back. Marcus. The safe. Dante. I sat up, finding a note on the nightstand written in elegant script. Breakfast downstairs when you're ready. Take your time. D. The bathroom was a revelation. Marble and glass. A shower with multiple heads. Toiletries that were definitely not drugstore brands. I stood under water hot enough to scald, washing away the previous day until my skin was pink, and my muscles finally loosened. The closet held clothes as promised. Jeans that actually fit. Soft sweaters. Even underwear in my exact size, which should have felt invasive, but somehow just felt considerate. I dressed in dark jeans and a cream sweater, braiding my damp hair over one shoulder, and ventured downstairs. Voices led me to a sunlit breakfast room overlooking the gardens. Dante sat at the head of a smaller table, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt rolled to his elbows, reading something on a tablet. Marco stood near the window, coffee in hand, speaking quietly into his phone. Dante looked up as I entered, and his expression transformed, the hard edges softening into something warmer. Good morning. How did you sleep? Better than I have in months, I admitted, taking the seat beside him that seemed to be set for me. Rosa appeared immediately with coffee and a plate of fresh pastries, fruit, and what looked like a frittata. Good. Dante set aside his tablet, giving me his full attention. We have developments. Marco? Marco ended his call and approached the table. Marcus contacted his lawyer an hour ago from a burner phone. He's demanding the divorce proceedings continue, claiming you have property that belongs to him. He wants the safe's contents returned. He knows we have them, I said, my stomach nodding. Yes, which means he's desperate. Dante's fingers drummed once against the table. Desperate men make mistakes. We're using that. How? I forced myself to eat, knowing I'd need strength for whatever came next. We're going to give Marcus what he wants, Dante said, his voice carrying the calm of absolute certainty. A meeting. Neutral ground. He'll come thinking he can negotiate, maybe even eliminate you as a witness. Instead, he'll walk into a situation he can't escape. The casual discussion of using me as bait should have terrified me. Instead, I felt oddly calm. When? Tonight. There's an abandoned warehouse near the docks. My family owns it, controls the surrounding area. Marcus will feel safe meeting there, because it's public enough that he'll think I won't make a move. He's wrong. Dante's hand found mine. You'll be protected every second. Multiple security teams, all armed. He won't get within 10 feet of you. What about afterward? I asked. Even if you handle Marcus, what about his associates, the people he sold your information to? Already being addressed, Dante's smile was sharp. My father's organization is vast, Elena. We have people in positions Marcus can't imagine. His buyers are being contacted, reminded of the consequences of purchasing stolen goods. Most will return what they bought and sever ties. The ones who don't. He shrugged. They'll receive stronger encouragement. Marco's phone buzzed. He read the message and nodded. Lawyer confirmed the meeting, 8 p.m. Marcus is bringing 2 men, probably hired muscle since he burned all his real connections. Amateurs, Dante said dismissively. Probably found them through classified ads. They won't be a problem. The conversation continued, tactics and contingencies discussed with military precision. I ate mechanically, processing the reality that tonight would end with Marcus either dead or disappeared, and I felt nothing but acceptance. Hours passed in strange suspension. Dante worked from his home office, insisting I stay close. I curled up on the leather couch with a book from his extensive library, though I mostly just watched him, the way he commanded respect through phone calls, how his expressions shifted between cold authority and unexpected warmth when his eyes found me. Around 6 p.m. he closed his laptop. It's time to prepare. Rosa had laid out clothes in my room. Dark jeans, a black sweater, comfortable boots. Practical clothes for whatever tonight held. I dressed slowly, my hands steady, despite the surreal nature of preparing for a confrontation with my ex-husband that would end in his elimination. Dante appeared in my doorway, also dressed in black, looking dangerous and beautiful in equal measure. Are you ready? I think so. I turned to face him. Dante, after tonight, what happens to me? He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hands framing my face with that tenderness that always caught me off guard. After tonight, you're free. Truly free. The apartment I mentioned, it's already prepared. A 2-bedroom in a good neighborhood. Fully furnished. I've arranged a position at a private library, cataloging rare books. Part-time, good pay, which will give you space to write. Everything you need to start over. Tears pricked my eyes. Why are you doing all this? Because you deserve it. His thumbs brushed away the moisture gathering on my lashes, because watching you survive despite everything Marcus did to destroy you is the most remarkable thing I've witnessed in years. Because... He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. Because in another life, I'd ask you to stay here, with me. But you've been trapped enough. You deserve freedom, not another cage. The confession stole my breath. What if I don't want complete freedom? What if I want... I couldn't finish. Couldn't articulate the dangerous attachment I'd developed to this man who protected me with lethal efficiency, while treating me like something precious. Don't decide now, Dante said, though his eyes blazed with barely controlled hunger. Tonight, we end Marcus's threat. Tomorrow, you have space to figure out who you are without fear or obligation. Then, if you still want to explore what this is between us... His forehead rested against mine. I'll be here, waiting, hoping. A knock interrupted. Marco's voice. Boss, it's time. The drive to the warehouse was tense, 3 vehicles moving in formation through darkening streets. Dante held my hand the entire way, his grip steady and grounding. We arrived at an industrial area near the water, buildings dark and silent, except for the warehouse that glowed with strategically placed lights. Inside was sparse, concrete floors, metal beams, shadows that could hide an army. Dante's security teams were already positioned, invisible to casual observation, but ready. He led me to a spot near the center, behind a partial wall that offered cover. You stay here, he commanded. Marco and 2 others will be with you at all times. Marcus won't even see you until I allow it. Be careful, I said, the words inadequate for what I felt. His kiss was unexpected, fierce and claiming, his hand tangling in my braid as he pulled me close. When he released me, we were both breathing hard. That's incentive to finish this quickly. He murmured against my lips. Stay safe, Elena. Then he was gone, moving to the warehouse entrance with fluid grace. 8 p.m. arrived. Engine sounds outside, then voices. Marcus entered with 2 men who looked exactly like what they were, cheap muscle, uncomfortable and out of their depth. Marcus looked terrible, unshaven, eyes wild, clothes rumpled. The polished fraud I'd married was gone, replaced by something desperate and dangerous. "Where is she?" he demanded, his voice echoing. "Where's Elena?" "Safe," Dante replied, stepping from shadows with 4 of his men flanking him. "Far from you. She has no right. Those files are mine. The safe contained evidence of your theft from my family," Dante interrupted, his voice cold. "Evidence that's already been copied and distributed to ensure if anything happens to me, it reaches the proper authorities. You're finished, Marcus." "Then I have nothing to lose." Marcus reached for something, but Dante's men moved faster, weapons appearing with practiced efficiency. "Don't," Dante said quietly. "Your hired help knows they're outgunned. Don't make them die for your stupidity." Indeed, Marcus's 2 men had frozen, hands raised, clearly wanting no part of whatever came next. "Elena!" Marcus shouted, spinning frantically. "I know you're here. This is your fault. If you'd just been grateful, just stayed quiet." "She was grateful," Dante said, and the fury in his voice made me shiver even from my concealed position. "She worked herself bloody trying to save your pathetic marriage, while you stole and schemed and planned to frame her for your crimes. You don't get to blame her for your failures." "What do you care?" Marcus spat. "She's nobody. Nothing. A means to an end. She's mine." The declaration rang through the warehouse. Absolute and unquestionable, and you're going to pay for every moment of suffering you caused her. What happened next was swift and efficient. Dante's men moved like choreographed dancers, disarming Marcus's hired muscle and securing them. Marcus tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. Within minutes, he was on his knees, Dante standing over him with cold judgment. "You have 2 choices," Dante said. "Cooperate completely. Return every file, every piece of information you sold, provide names and details, and you'll disappear. New identity, new country, alive but powerless, or refuse and—" He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Marcus crumbled. "I'll cooperate. Anything. Just don't—" "Smart choice." Dante gestured, and his men pulled Marcus to his feet. "You'll be transported to a secure location where my associates will debrief you. If you're truthful and complete, you'll wake up in 3 days with a new passport and a one-way ticket to a country with no extradition. If you lie, withhold information, or attempt escape—" He leaned in close, and though I couldn't hear the words, Marcus went pale. "Do we understand each other?" Marcus nodded frantically and was led away by guards who would ensure his cooperation. Dante returned to my hiding spot, finding me exactly where he'd left me. "It's done," he said simply. "Just like that?" My voice shook slightly. "Just like that." He pulled me against him, and I felt the tension leaving his body now that the threat was neutralized. "He'll be gone by morning. You'll never see him again. The divorce will be finalized within 2 weeks, through a judge who owes my family favors. You're free, Elena." Free. The word seemed too simple for everything it encompassed. We returned to the fortress. Home, I corrected myself, in silence, heavy with unspoken words. In the foyer, Dante paused. "Tomorrow I'll have someone drive you to see the new apartment," he said. "Give you space to process everything. The library position starts Monday if you want it, or later if you need more time, whatever you need." He was offering me freedom, real freedom, everything I should want. What if what I need is here? The words escaped before courage failed. What if I don't want space and distance? What if I want to understand what this is between us? Dante's eyes blazed. "Elena." "I'm not traumatized or confused," I interrupted. "I know the difference between gratitude and something real, and this—" I gestured between us. "Feels real. Terrifying and complicated and probably inadvisable, but real." His hands framed my face, thumbs tracing my cheekbones. "If you stay, it won't be as a guest or someone under protection. You'd be choosing me." My world. All the darkness that comes with it. I've lived in darkness, I said. Marcus is kind. The petty, cruel darkness of small men. Your darkness is different. It has purpose. Honor. You protect what's yours. I covered his hands with mine, so protect me. Not as an obligation, but because you want to. And let me choose you back. His kiss was answer enough. Deep and claiming. Full of promise and possession. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the smile was genuine. He murmured, "Not in the guest room. Here, with me. For however long you want. What if I want forever?" The question was bold, reckless, perfect. "Then I'll spend forever making sure you never regret choosing me," Dante promised. And standing in the foyer of his fortress, wrapped in the arms of a dangerous man who'd shown me more care in days than Marcus had in years, I believed him. The life I'd lost, the broken marriage, the exhausting survival, the slow erosion of self, was gone. In its place was something new. Uncertain, yes. Complicated, absolutely. But mine. Finally, completely mine. And I chose it. I chose him. I chose freedom that looked like protection, and love that tasted like danger, and a future built not on illusions but on truth as sharp and real as the man holding me close. "Take me upstairs," I whispered against Dante's lips. His answer was to sweep me into his arms, carrying me toward the rest of our story with the confidence of a man who protected what he loved. And I was loved. Protected. Home.